Here today to talk to you folks a little bit about calling before you dig. How many folks know the phone number to call before you dig? All right, what is it? Very good. Okay, so do you think 811 is just in North Carolina?
No.
No, who said no? Where else is it at?
South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia.
All right, you think it's in California? Probably. Yep, it absolutely is. 811 is a national number. In fact, we were able to acquire that number from the FCC 10 years ago. So prior to that, you may hear, depending upon from what state you came from, you may have heard someone say, well, I called you loco. Long time ago, the company was basically started by a group of excavators that wanted to protect facilities, and so it became ULOCO. Then we became North Carolina 811 as with a Tar Heel, North Carolina symbol, and now we are pretty much, you'll see on our information, North Carolina 811. So most of the states across the nation typically have their state in front of it and the 811. I particularly do not care if you remember North Carolina. All I want you to remember is 811 so that you do not have to 911. You get it? Get it? Call before you dig so that you don't have to call for help, right? Yes, sir?
Now, 811 is a public service, right? Like you don't pay for it and get billed for it.
It is a free service. So it is a free service for you to have underground facilities marked. There may be paint, there may be flags, or there may be stakes. So you're going to see one of the three. So today, that's what we're going to talk about. So now you know that 811 is national and it is a free service. There's no cost to you. So somebody give me a reason why you should not call.
If it's a private line on your private property.
Very good, very good. Oh, she beat you to the punch. That is the only reason. Otherwise, we need to call. Because most of us, you know, we think, well, you know, this is my piece of property. I know where those facilities are. Folks, no you don't. You may think it runs straight ahead and then all of a sudden it curves around. And especially up here in the mountains, it may curve way just to get out of the, you know, the way of some major bedrock, and then, you know, so we want to make sure that you allow 3 full days. That's how long you have to give prior to digging, okay? And so there's some steps along the way and we're going to talk about that. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and get started. Great statistic here for you. This is a true statistic coming out of our Common Ground Alliance. I'm sure once you guys are going to get out in the workforce, you're probably going to network with associations, and we have a national association called Common Ground Alliance. It's called CGA, and this stat comes out of that from all of the information that we provide to them from other call centers across the nation. Every 6 minutes, an underground utility line is damaged because someone decided to dig without first calling 811. So just imagine the time that we're spending here. Every 6 minutes, the utility line is being hit. And what we're wanting to do today is to educate you and to make that a priority, because at the end of the day, safety is number one. You know, you may have someone tell you, well, we've got this job and we've got to get it done. But at the end of the day, you want to go home to your family, because if you don't, now what your actions are now affecting everyone else. It could be a wife, it could be a child, it could be a parent, it could be a friend that you decided to make a decision and then put them at risk on a job site. So we want to make sure that it's just one simple call, 811. Here's another statistic. 45% of American homeowners who plan to dig this year, this was in a most recent survey, said that they would not call 811 beforehand. Do you think that puts folks at risk? Absolutely. So the biggest challenge we have educating is homeowners. So we spend time out at trade shows, home shows, anywhere that we can. We've done a lot of educating at universities within North Carolina just to put that message in their hand. Because at some point you're going to become a homeowner, or you're going to work in the industry, and you're going to need to have that number, and you'll say, oh, I remember when I was in college, someone gave me this cool little magnet that went on my refrigerator that, you probably opened your beer with, right? But it said 811, so you kept it and you're like, oh wow, I got that message. So those are some of the things that we do to educate. Got a great little video here.
I know it's old fashioned, but I don't have a cell phone. So when the landline cut out, we just felt so isolated.
The power was down on the entire block. It was a Saturday, so the kids were home.
I wouldn't say that I'm addicted, but when I lost my cable and internet, I was paralyzed.
We have no idea what they put me through.
This
And
you
all
guys,
because my neighbors didn't call 811. Did they, honey?
Be a good neighbor and contact 811 3 full working days before you dig. For more information, go to nc811.org.
so that little guy there that's having that anxiety attack, I've been there. I know what it feels like. So myself and all my liaisons across the state, we all work from home. We travel educating. So our office is in the comfort of our home. So if someone's digging within our neighborhood and cuts our internet service, I'm dead in the water. So you don't want to be one of those statistics. You want to be aware. And so at the end, I'm going to show you our handy dandy app, and you can be a nosy neighbor and you can tell who's digging around you. But in reality, it's going to be to help protect those. All right, so very simple, North Carolina 811, we are the call center for North Carolina. We are located in Greensboro. Majority of all of our CSRs work from home. Why do you think they work from home? Any idea? Oh, I stumped you. That's cool. All right, so imagine up here in the mountains you have 3 feet of snow. Hey, you can't, my CSR is living up in this area and they can't get to the call center. That's one of the reasons that if we have some major things that go through the state, we have CSRs that can take the calls from all around the state. So the majority of our CSRs do work from home. Not in the beginning, but once they've developed and feel comfortable that they can work from home, then we move them to home because number one, it's cheaper. They don't have to buy dress clothes to come to work every day. They can sit in the comfort of their home. And then we know that our calls are answered 24/7. So that's one of the reasons. Now, let's tell you a little bit about us. Who is NC 811? Well, we are a nonprofit organization. A lot of people say, oh, you have a state job? No, I don't work for the state. I actually work for the utility companies. So anyone that has underground facilities, there's a law, and there was a couple folks that grabbed one of my excavation guides. This is our Bible within the industry. So when you guys get out and work and you're working for project managers and doing work, this is one piece of equipment you'll always want. You can either have it in the spiral bound, or we have it on our app. It's on our website. You can download it. It's in English and Spanish. There's a lot of great information that is going to teach you what you should and shouldn't do. I've got this handy dandy little picture in the guide, and it shows you how to use a shovel. Because surprisingly, a lot of people really do not know how to use a shovel. So we have all sorts of information in here that's going to help you get your job done. But most importantly, here's the law. This is what the law says you have to do. So because we're nonprofit, we're owned by the member utilities. They're the ones that support our budget. And we therefore have a board, which is comprised of utility companies. And then there's different reasons to why this person gets a seat versus another. But in a nutshell, we are nonprofit, we're owned by the member utilities, okay? So why should you call 811? Well, so you don't damage underground facilities. How many folks are familiar with fiber? Very good. So fiber is definitely the up and coming utility around the state. I'm sure you heard about Google Fiber. A lot of Google projects that have been around the Charlotte, Raleigh area for the last couple of years. So once someone comes in, typically there's another utility that comes alongside that says, hey, you can't get ahead of me. We're going to make sure our facilities underground are just as great. So AT&T has had a lot of projects. So all across the state there has been fiber. So you may have noticed there have been boring crews, and basically they're trying to bore underground so that they're not having to do open cuts. In their mind, it's a cheaper way to do it that keeps facilities safe. But what we're finding is, because there's so many utilities underground, they're hitting stuff left and right. So that's a whole other education piece, but most of all, we don't want you to damage those underground facilities. And we want you to protect yourself and your neighbors. I've got a commercial running, you may have seen it. It's on Time Warner Cable or Spectrum. How many folks remember Cheers? Okay, so John Ratzenberger is in my commercial, and it's awesome. If you haven't seen it, go out, just Google his name, Google John Ratzenberger 811, and you'll see it. It's really great. And I hear people all the time say, oh, I remember you because I saw that video. So we want to try to find ways that we can educate folks and help them to remember, and he's a great spokesperson. So we want to protect yourself, and we want to protect your neighbors. And it's the law. The law says if you're going to excavate, you're required to call before you dig. Bam. That's it. End of story. Now, we as homeowners, we do have an exemption. But I caution you, because once again, most of us have no idea where our facilities lie, so it is always just a great idea to call. But the law says if you are a homeowner, you can dig anywhere on your piece of property with a shovel. That's why I showed you that picture in there, so that you know how to use the shovel. You dig parallel to it, you don't dig on top of it. We try to educate as much as we can. But once again, you don't know where your facilities are located, just make the call. Anyone planning on disturbing the earth must contact 811, just like we talked about. There's all sorts of things that are underground. There's gas. You know, gas is one of the largest utilities. It's one of the safest utilities, but it's very dangerous. So we want to make sure that you're working around it very safe. The telecommunication, it may not be physically as dangerous, but trust me, it will put you out of business if you're a contractor, if you hit something. It could be a fiber that runs to a data center, a 911 center. How about a hospital? I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So, you know, I caution and say, I want you guys to be scared, because at the end of the day, this stuff is providing vital services.
Well, do you know what happened on the Outer Banks thing when
I do.
they had to evacuate the
I
Outer
do.
Banks?
Well, so it was very interesting. A lot of folks were like, hey, they did not call before they dig, or they dug. Well, actually, it really was not around digging. They were moving some equipment with a crane, and the piece of equipment they were trying to, or I should say, supplies or whatever, and they had it on a crane, and it come upwards and down, and then it hit one of the utilities. So it really wasn't that they had not called before they dug. It was, I mean, it was just a safety type hazard that it was just one of those things that happened. So could they have been a little more careful? Probably. But at the end of the day, thank goodness no one got hurt. And it was so awesome how those utilities got into the trenches and were able to supply the power back to that island. So, I mean, you've seen it, it was all over national news. So one little incident like that, I mean, you got everybody screaming down your back. So, but yes, it was not due to not calling before they dug.
Well, but they're still liable.
You got
for
it.
any kind of damages, so.
Somebody's gonna
They'll
have to
probably
pay
go
that
out of
bill.
business with-
So, absolutely. So once again, when you get in the trenches one day, if your boss says do this, do that, I mean, go with your gut. If you know it's not safe, if you know it's not right, stand your ground, because that you definitely don't want to be on the news. And I'm sure that guy was made an example of. So that's what happened. So how much does the service cost? Any idea? We just talked about it. It was free. Absolutely 100% free. So it's free to us, but I mean, think about it in reality. Here's the reason why this service is free. It is so much cheaper for utility companies to pay locators to come mark those facilities than it is to repair them in case you hit it. So that's how the service kind of come to be. They want to protect the facilities because they are expensive and they're dangerous. So it's a free service to you, but ultimately in the end, you know, we're going to end up paying for it, probably through our utilities. All right, so how does the process work? Well, I'm gonna talk about several steps with you, but step one is have your information ready before you call. So the first thing I want you to do is grab your guide to safe digging. We provide this guide through all of our training all around the state. And if you open it, the first page is gonna talk about the 5 steps to safe digging. And then the next page will show you all the information that you're gonna need. A lot of this information is just kind of common sense type information. You know, what address are you gonna be working at? Because when you call, what's gonna happen is our customer service reps are gonna plug that address in, and then all of a sudden, all these maps are gonna come up. And there's overlays of maps that show where the facilities are. So let's take, for instance, CenturyLink. Say there's CenturyLink in the area. They're gonna provide us their maps, and we're gonna, load them into our system. And then we're gonna add Duke Energy, that comes into our system. So all the utilities that show up around that address are the folks that are gonna get notified. But you gotta provide us this information, a phone number, and that's real important because if a locator needs to contact you, they know exactly who to reach out to. So a lot of times we have folks sitting in an office, but that's not the real person that needs to be contacted. So we need to make sure that you provide us the correct information. Is it inside or outside city limits? We need a cross street because that helps them directionally know where to go to. You may be on the south end versus the north end. So if you give us a cross street, we can kind of find out where you're going. What exactly do you want located? That is the most important part of it. You don't want to send these folks on a wild goose chase. And it's really important because we had almost 2 million locates last year. We had 1.9 million, almost 2 million locates. So for every locate, remember I talked about all these maps that were loaded on top of each other? There may be 5 facilities in that one parcel. So that means 5 people are gonna get notified. So for every locate on average is about 5.7 locates or transmissions per locate. So one locate, and then it gets transmitted out to all the utilities that are within the area, okay? So imagine we had almost 2 million locates last year. A lot of transmissions. So, and all of that is free to you guys as consumers. It's important that you tell us when you're gonna work. The law says that you make the call, then you have to wait 3 full working days. So your work date should be 3 full working days after. And I'll show you how that works
What
in another
if
slide.
it is an emergency? I have an emergency I have to do.
If it's an emergency, it depends on what your emergency is. Your poor planning, that doesn't constitute an emergency. Do people do that? Yes. And if you call in and you say it's an emergency, we gotta dig right now, our CSRs cannot question that. If we have a contractor that we see is doing that a lot, we'll go out and talk to them. But poor planning does not constitute an emergency. Emergency would be you have sewer just spewing up everywhere. Or you have a water main break that's affecting transportation. That's an emergency, okay? And you can go ahead right then and dig with care. All right? So this is some of the information you're gonna need. So mark your dig site in white. Within that excavation guide here, the next page, it's gonna talk a little bit about white lining your dig site. So, white lining. What color is it? That's pretty good. White, very good. I provided you a color code card. These are national APWA color code standards. White is always going to be proposed excavation. Pink is going to always be your temporary survey markings, red for electric, yellow for gas and petroleum. You're going to have orange for telco, internet, any type of cables, conduits, blue, potable water. So that is the one color when we go to educate in elementary. All the kids know that. Purple's reclaimed water, and then green is sewer. So we want to make sure when you're proposing where you're going to work, if you cannot adequately describe, the law says you have to white line it. There's a reason why white lining is so important. Because of such huge demand for locators to come out and mark, the easier you have that area located or marked off, the quicker those locators can get out there, mark the facilities based on your locate, and then they can move on. Because otherwise, they would mark the whole lot. And in reality, you're only working on the front right corner. You're only planting a tree in the front. So if you would mark that area where you're gonna be planting, they could quickly get it done and move on, okay? So that's important. White lining is so very important, number one. Just remember always to pre-mark your job site. The law also requires, and when the law changed in 2014, it required when you use white paint, it has to be water soluble. And the reason being is that a lot of the paints will stay there for a long time. So if you go back out on a job site and you're working and you see some lines, you may think, oh, they've been marked, I'm okay. No, don't trust that. Always make sure that your locate matches your marks, okay? Don't trust anybody else's. Step 2, call 811. So you're gonna speak with a customer service rep and they're gonna ask you all that detailed information. At the conclusion of that locate request, they're gonna give you a ticket number and a list of all the utilities that are gonna be notified. So they'll walk you through it verbally, and then they're gonna give you that number. And then you always wanna hold on to that ticket number because that's how you're gonna track who's come out and who's done what, okay? All right, so there's other ways that you can call in. Some folks don't have the ability, you've worked all day, you know, you haven't had time. If you're a contractor and you're calling in multiple, we have, as long as you have an internet connection, you have the ability to put the tickets in yourself. You'll see the same mapping that our CSRs see, and it's a time saver because at 12 midnight, you forgot to call in a ticket, bam, you can put it in right then, okay? So that's one option. We do require about an hour's worth of training, and we can do that online with you, so it's not like you have to come to us or us come to you. We can do it right through an online training portal. The other way is called our single address ticket. And once we get to our app video, there on our app, we have all sorts of buttons that are resources for you. Single address ticket. When we designed this portion of the app, we thought this will be great for our homeowners. But really, in reality, our contractors are really the ones that have been using it mostly. It is only for one single address. So if you're working just at that one address, we will allow you to use this. We verify it, make sure that it's only one address, and then we'll immediately send you an email with that ticket number. So bam, it's done. It's great, because once we collect your information, it's in the system, and it will be held there for 6 months. If after 6 months you haven't called in for a locate, you'll have to re-enter it if you do. You're still considered a first-time caller. So, step 3, wait the required time. As I said, you make your call, then you have to wait 3 full working days. The ticket, if you call it in, and we're gonna look here, if you called it in on Monday, it's gonna start ticking that night at 11:59, okay? So then you have to wait 3 full working days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So really, at 11:59 Thursday night, you're free to dig. So if I'm a highway contractor, I can actually start working after midnight. But if not, you know, obviously you're free to work the next day if you have a project. Yes,
So
ma'am?
even if you put a ticket in on Monday morning at 6 a.m., that day doesn't count?
It doesn't start being transmitted till 11:59 that night. That's when the ticket physically starts ticking.
Why is it 3 days?
That's what the law says.
But what, doesn't the law say 3?
Even if it's been
You
more?
have to wait 3 full working days.
Yeah, that's just a little deceptive, because if you send something at 6 a.m., then technically you would think that's, I mean, I see that, but.
Yeah. That part states that the ticket starts at 11:59. So if you call it in, that's why we say your ticket will start ticking that day. It just doesn't start until 11:59. Yes, sir.
Can you put a ticket on Sunday, then Monday will count as a full day?
Okay, we're gonna get to that. It's gonna be this last one here. So let's talk about Tuesday. If you call your ticket in on Tuesday, I say if you're a weekend warrior, you need to always call your locate in by Tuesday. Then you have Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday you're free to dig on Saturday. So if you plan on doing any type of planning over the weekend, make sure you call it in by Tuesday. Monday, you can call it in. You can call it in on Tuesday, as long as you plan to work on Saturday. So those are only for weekends, and holidays are excluded. They're not part of that 3 full working day. So I want to call my ticket in on Wednesday. I have to wait Thursday, Friday. Weekends and holidays are excluded. The only way that any of that you could dig is if it was an emergency. And then you have to wait on Monday. Technically, you're good at 11:59 that night, but you could dig the next day. Okay? Now that holiday, like Thanksgiving, that didn't count. So you had to wait till the next day to where we had a full day. Yes, sir.
What happens if they're marked and you start digging on day 2?
Okay,
What's the penalty?
well, you can do that, but let's just see the next one. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about that. There may be another slide in here. So there is, in your little guide here, there's a page that's called Positive Response. So how it works is you call in, you give us your information, it gets transmitted. The locators then in turn start coming out. You may have 4 different locators that come out and mark those facilities, or you may have USIC who marks for a lot of different utility companies, so there may only be 2. So you are required by law to check your positive response. If your positive response says, hey, I'm marked, or there's no conflict, you go out to your job site, you match up to those marks, and your positive response, you're free to dig. You can dig technically before the end of that 3 full working days. But I caution you, make sure you do your due diligence, because if not, you may end up paying for something if you hit it.
What if it's not marked within the 3 days and then you dig because you're on a schedule? Then
Well,
can you be penalized?
there is, in the law, and you'll be able to find that. So if you've waited for 3 full working days, you checked your positive response, and nobody's responded. That means you now have the ability in the law to call in a 3-hour ticket, okay? So we suggest that you call back and you say, AT&T has not responded, I'm requesting a 3-hour ticket. They have 3 hours in which to respond, okay? And if after that point they do not respond, you don't see any facilities that you feel are there, then you're free to dig with care. But it does allow you that 3-hour ticket for them to come out.
So what happens if you did all that and then you hit a line of theirs?
Well, then it becomes a matter between you as the contractor and the utility. As long as you've done your due diligence, if you know for sure that line was there, then basically, that'll be between you guys to hash out whether they're going to charge you for it. But I would caution you once again, get to know your locators, be involved. Because if you know how to play the rules of the game, it makes it a whole lot easier when you're out there on the job site and you need a locator right then. So it's not a cut and dry process, but if you follow the law as best you can to the letter, chances are they're not going to charge you for it. Yes, sir.
Do different companies provide different markers? Like, would an AT&T provide their own marker and say the power company provide theirs?
They could. The color will be the same.
I'm talking about individual people. Like,
Right,
you said
okay,
different
so
people.
once again, they can either mark with paint, flags, or stakes. Typically, your gas folks, they're not gonna use flags because a lot of times they're metal. So they're not gonna run the risk if they put a flag in the ground that it could hit a gas line. They may use plastic flags, or they may put lines on the ground. Yes, some do, some don't. Sometimes you'll see their name actually written on the flag. But we do, you'll know, because we have resources that will tell you who are these facilities in the area. Your ticket will say, this is an AT&T line, it should. They typically do mark with AT&T. Or you'll have their phone number off of that ticket to contact them. So we encourage you to get involved, because the more you get to know your local locators, the easier it is. Yes, sir.
I just want to point out to the class that you never want to increase risk on a job.
Absolutely.
And if you get tangled up and you're perfectly in the right and you dug and you knock out the line to the Outer Banks, it's still a bad day.
It is.
Okay, so
Still a
you
bad
want to
day.
avoid that, any kind of litigation, any kind of possibility that could get.
So what you'll find is a lot of companies will say, okay, I did everything that I was supposed to do, but I still hit something. So there may be a reason. It could be that the locator marked it wrong. It could be something on their end. So what you'll find is on the back end, a lot of times the insurance companies will litigate for your downtime because you did everything right. The locator mismarked, so you know they may send you a bill, but then you in turn send them a bill for downtime. So you see, sometimes it just kind of washes out. It's not a black and white world. It is very complicated, convoluted, but do your best, like he said, to limit risk. Okay?
I'll make a plug for our graduate program, because a lot of seniors in here. We have a forensic class in the graduate program that's online, and it all talks about contractors that get sucked into situations that cost them millions of dollars, and they've done nothing wrong. It's just they've got to hire a lawyer, they got to deal with it, and they got to go through the process. It's very expensive.
We hear a lot, time is money. So, you know, but you can't put a price on a life. So I caution you to always be careful. We get this a lot. A lot of time folks say, well, you know, you haven't come out and marked my facilities. Well, 811 does not mark facilities. We are only the notification center. We are the hub to take your calls, and then we will then in turn transmit it out to those member utilities. Back in 2014, when the law changed, it required anyone that had facilities underground to become a member. So there were some larger entities like City of Greensboro, High Point, they were still not members at the time. So if you had called 811, we would say, these are the members that are going to be notified. So if you know there's a water company within the area that I didn't give you the name, you need to call them directly. So now with the change in the law, we've tried to make it easier so there'll be one call gets them all. But there's still some small entities out there. There's even some entities like homeowners associations that own facilities, but they're not members. They still, if a facility of theirs is cut, they cannot bill you for damages. So the law kind of gives them that reason to become a member so that they don't have to repair the facility on their own. All right? Okay, is there anything that won't get located? And here I think you had mentioned, right? Private lines. Utilities typically only locate lines that they own. So basically that means if you have a water meter, most municipalities are only going to locate up to that water meter. And from the meter to the house is considered the homeowner's side, and it's not going to be located. The reason being, it's plastic. There's no tracer line to it. But from what I understand, the building code has recently changed to where if you're putting in any type of underground facilities for water and sewer, they will be required to have a tracer line. Now, will those facility owners locate it? No. It'll help you. I don't know, has anybody ever used witching sticks before? It works. It really works. And it will help you. It will help you to find that. So, so once again, we're not going to mark anything that's going to be private. So I'm going to show you kind of a photo here and you can get an idea. All your public facilities are going to typically be within your right-of-ways. If you have, just think of it in this way. If you have a meter, the line going to the meter is going to be public. And then if it's not, say like the water meter, it's out at the street, it's going to go to there. And then from there to the house is residential. And then your power, it goes to your meter, it's going to go all the way to your house. Your cable, all of that, wherever your meter's at is where they're going to mark to. Where they're not going to mark is, say you want to build a utility building and you're going to put power out there to that, you have an electrician run it, that's considered private. They're not going to mark that, okay? Because technically that's not running back to the meter base. So that's just going to run back to your control panel. Any questions on that? good. So on our website, we do have a list of folks that, should you need those type of facilities marked, there's all sorts of folks that do that. There is a cost to it. It is not free. That is not a free service. And once again, this is where you can go out on our website. So, once you've made your call, you begin your project. Well, that ticket that you called in is good for 15 working days before it expires. Those first 3 days are also part of that 15 days. So technically, you do kind of lose a couple days of work, but in the situation where you talked about, can you start the project before the end of the 3 days, technically you could make an extra day up, but for the most part, you can't start working till everything's clear, and then you have 15 days. Say you're working on a project that you know that is going to continue past those 15 working days, you need to update the ticket. And you do that on the 12th day. Why do you think you do it on the 12th day?
Very good,
very good, very good. So always be careful. If you forget to update it on that 12th day, you could technically put yourself a day out without being protected, under a good ticket. So just be careful. Our system used to allow tickets to be updated prior to that, and then we had to finally put a parameter on it because we had folks sitting in offices that on Monday said, okay, I have all these tickets, I'm just going to update them, make sure they're good. But what was happening is every time a ticket goes out to a utility company, they're charged for it. They're paying for it. So even though it's a free service for us, the utility companies are paying for every transmission that comes to them. So remember when I said there's one ticket, an average of 5.5 transmissions, every time they get a transmission, they get charged for it. So we try to eliminate as much misuse as possible. There's definitely a fine science to the whole system. Only the person that called in the ticket may update it. And the reason being is there's a phone number tied to the ticket. So we'll give you the ticket number, and as long as you have that phone number connected to it, you can update it. There's a couple ways to update tickets. You can do it through our app, and that's called Update Lite. And it's really handy, so if you're out on the job site and you're like, oh man, it's day 12, bam, I can do it right there. I can plug in the ticket, put the phone number in, and it updates the ticket right then. You can do it through the phone. So then step 4 is to respect the marks. So what happens is once the marks go down on the ground, we have what is called a tolerance zone. As I had stated before, you may see flags, you may see stakes, and you may see paint. So it could be one of the three. It really depends on where it's located. If there's facilities running across a highway, obviously they're not going to put flags in asphalt, so you're going to see paint. And there's rhyme and reasons to how they mark facilities. But once again, we went over those color codes that's in your excavation guide, and then I gave you a little card. So once you're protecting those marks, the law requires that you check the positive response. Simple. Positive response is communication between you as the excavator and the locator. Those are the people that are communicating. So within there were all these different positive response codes, and it's always going to give you, it's not going to give you a code without a description, so you're going to always know what they're doing. On our app, it's great. You can go right to check positive response, or if you provide us an email, we're going to send you an email every time they put that in after the 3 full working days. So either way, we're going to help you meet that requirement of the law. So the locator is required to put it in, and you as excavator are required to check it. So once you check it, you go out, you match it up, then you're free to dig if you feel comfortable. So we talked about that. All right, so step 5 is to dig with care. So there's a tolerance zone. The law says it's 24 inches on either side of the mark. Now, this particular 24 inches, in the law it says it's for pipes that are 4 inches or less in diameter. You're going to see one mark on the ground. But if they go out there and they find there's an 8-inch pipe, then obviously that's larger than 4. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna take half the diameter of that pipe. What's half of 8? 4. And you're gonna add it to the 24 inches on either side. So now what does that make that facility on either side? Very good. So here's the key to it. You've got 28 inches on either side, but now you've got a facility larger than 4 inches. So the locators have to mark every 25 feet the size of the pipe so that you know what size of pipe's in there, okay? So it could technically increase your tolerance zone. So once again, that's why we provide you these excavation guides with photos to make sure you understand it. You are not allowed to put any type of mechanized equipment. So that means a backhoe. You can use a shovel, and that's what they want you to do. And the reason is to keep it safe until you've exposed those facilities. Once you see where they're at, you've protected them, then you're free to put your mechanized equipment, because now you know where they're at.
The North Carolina 811 app has tons of great information about safe digging right at your fingertips. The About section outlines who NC811 is and what we do. Contacting us was never easier. Click the map to find us and click the phone number to call us. Read up on the North Carolina state statute. Use the SAT section to access the single address ticket feature and submit locate requests right from the app. Have the APWA color codes right in your pocket. Keep up to date with events taking place within NC811 and share them with others in your industry. Use Update Like and update live locate requests wherever you are. See who has already marked your line and check the status of your locate request by using Positive Response. Just enter your ticket number. Access live ticket information via your GPS location with Near Ticket. Then you'll know who's digging around you. Use Dirt Light to report an incident involving underground utilities. Take a look at the Pipes Plus website. Pipes Plus helps educate the public about safe digging practices around gas, electric, telecommunication lines, and more. See when your ticket will expire and when to update it with the RTE calendar. Click on the damage notification button to access utility contact information in your area. See a listing of contract and private line locators under the locator number section. Check out our RSS newsfeed and read up on exciting events in NC811. Use the quick jump to easily access other safe digging related websites. Watch informative videos provided by NC811 to better educate you about safe digging and the importance of calling 811 before you dig. You can also read up on what's happening on NC811's Facebook and Twitter pages. It's all right here in the palm of your hand. Think safe, think NC811. To download the app today, visit us online at nc811.org/NC811 app. Available for download on Android, Apple, and Amazon smart devices, and access the app using HTML5, which can be used on most any device.
So the app is probably the best resource that you can download, and you can do anything right through your app. One of the things that I wanted to kind of show you was we were talking about who's digging around you. To me, this is probably one of the coolest features on the app. And it's called Near Ticket, and as it said, it worked off the GPS. So what I do is I tell it to get tickets within 1,000 foot of where I'm at. You have to allow it to see. I guess where we're standing within 1,000 foot, there's no work going on. There's no digging, so there's no active locates. But if there was, it would tell you exactly what it was in a map, okay? So the last thing that I want to say, and then we'll be...
You can show it to them here.
Yeah, oh, that'd be great. I started to bring mine in.
Just there.
Yeah. Oh, okay, super. Wow, look at that. Okay, so I'm just gonna go back. Okay, so here's the beginning of the app. You can see there's all sorts of buttons. Remember we talked about the excavation guide? It's right here. You click on it, it's going to give you the full print of the hardbound copy, okay? Here's another cool feature. It's called damage contact. This is really important. If we're working, let's use Buncombe, for instance. There's 100 counties in North Carolina. I'm going to click on Buncombe. These are all the member utilities within Buncombe County. There's their name, the damage contact. If you hit a facility, this is who you're going to call for AT&T transmission. Antonio. There's his phone number. When I worked in the industry for a municipality, I spent hours and hours collecting this data. Now we collect it directly from the members and we provide it right to you. So every one of these folks are utilities just in Buncombe County. So if you guys are looking for just a list, go right there. That's where it's at. That is really a cool feature. If you forget what your color codes are, bam, it's right there. If you want to do that single address ticket we talked about, you can go right there. You have to accept some of the verbiage, and then you agree, and then you proceed, and you provide us all that dig information. But the near ticket, as I said, if you click on that, it will allow you to go up to 1,000 foot. You click get tickets. You have to allow it to use your current location because that's how it works. And then it says, no tickets found within 1,000 foot of where we're standing. I promise, try this. You'll be amazed. It's pretty cool. So once I go back, I don't allow it. And it brings me back to my main page. If I need to update that ticket, I can go right there. And what it does is it takes me back into my system. I have to use that locate ticket number. All sorts of stuff here. If you want to find locator phone numbers, they're right there. You can have contract locators. You can have private line locators. This is just a tool that you guys are going to use. So I encourage you to download it. You can make a call right through the app as well.
Why isn't the information out there where we could locate it ourselves?
It is. If you will, we use a lot of search engine optimization with words and everything. So if you were to hopefully go out on Google, type 811, it may come up to call811.com, but then you can find our state. Or if you know 81 or digging, we've got those keywords out there. So we spend a lot of time making sure that if you went out to search, you should be able to find us. You may notice there's 40 billboards across the state. I educate through that.
Say find, like, what, I wanted to go mark my own utilities.
Well, you couldn't mark your own utilities because you don't know where they're at.
That's what I'm saying, like, why isn't that information out there so we could just, like,
Well,
know?
okay, so think about it this way. First of all, you don't know, you don't have the maps. You don't know the utilities, the companies that put them in the ground. You have no idea where they're at. That's why this service is in existence. So that those member utilities provide the maps to their locators, and they'll use that along with their equipment to find that utility. Just because the map says it's here, they still have to go out and they have to physically mark the facility. So it's there to protect you. That's what the whole 811 system is about, is providing you a service that's free. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was saying with time, like, if I was a contractor and I had, say, AT&T's plan, I knew it was there already, and I could send a guy out there that day and mark everything, and I could start my job, that would benefit me a lot more than having to wait 3 days.
Well, there are some contractors that do have locators on site just to verify what has been marked. So yes, you can do that. You can learn to use that piece of equipment, most definitely. There's lots and lots of contractors that have their locators all on site. But the system is there for you to use, and then you can verify it through your tools that you have. Transmission pipelines, I do want to mention this. So you'll notice there's transmission pipelines across the country. They're all over. You'll typically see markers. Anytime you're working around high pressure mains, you are required to always have someone on site. They do have to be there when you're digging unless they give you permission to dig without it. But otherwise, we encourage you folks to get to know your locators. Use the service. Try it yourself. You know, if you're planting a tree, if you're going to dig a garden, use it. That way you can see how it operates. So, you guys had good questions. You're making me think today. I like your question, that was interesting.
Is there are there like, would there be fines issued, let's say someone, and who's
Good.
responsible for issuing
Okay,
them?
so the law created back in 2014, the law created the ability to make a complaint, because before 2014, there were no complaint-driven penalties. So if we encourage folks to really try to work things out, contractors work things out with locators, so on and so forth. But if you get to that point and you say, hey, I've done all I can, this is just a bad contractor, you can report that, and on our website, we have the ability for you to make a complaint. That in turn goes to the Underground Damage Prevention Review Board. That review board was sat by the governor, and so they meet once a quarter and they look at those complaints. They can be given anything from education, and if they are given education, they've approved the Pipes Plus, so they take that. Or they could be fined up to $2,500. So it could be per incident. So say they didn't call 811, that's one. That's one part in the law says you have to do. Two, they dug within a tolerance zone, that's two. They could be fined for every incident there is. So it could be very expensive. But yes, that is in place. Yes, sir.
So the tolerance zone is like 24 inches on each side.
For 4 inches or less.
Right,
And
so-
anything after that, it's half the diameter. And half of that is added to each side, unless it's a duct bank.
And are they usually very accurate with it, or like could you be digging with a backhoe like?
That's why
5
you have
feet
that
away?
tolerance zone. That tolerance zone gives you that little bit of area to, hopefully the marks are on, but occasionally they're not.
Does it ever lie out of the tolerance zone?
It could. I mean, it could be that it's mismarked, and if it's mismarked, then obviously you're required by law to report the damage. First, you have to report it to the utility company, and then you have to report it to 811. So it could happen, and locating is not an exact science. There's going to be mistakes, but you do your best to make sure that you're doing the best job. I mean, all of us, any type of job we do, we always want to do our best to make sure it's accurate. But it is not an exact science. Yes, sir. Did you have a question?
Well, I was actually just going to say maybe the last thing that you could probably, your last resort to have something not happen would just have a good operator to not
Yes.
tell. You can have operators that actually know
Yes.
if they're about to put something.
You always want to put your best lever puller on a piece of machinery. You definitely don't want to put me on. Yes, sir.
So if there's mismarking, you do hit it and break it due to being a fault.
Well, it depends on if it was a locator that mismarked it, then the locator will be responsible. And then you have to look at, does that locator work for a utility company? So, or it could just be USIC, for instance. They're a large locator, contract locator, they may pay for that.
A good way to look at it is you're guilty until proven innocent.
You got it. Well, you'll know. So here's the key to everything. And I forgot to tell you guys this. Take pictures of everything you do. Because a locator, when they go out to mark, they're taking pictures. So you make sure you take pictures too, because at the end of the day, your pictures tell the story. Yes, sir.
So like you said, you could have your own locator. If you did a 811 in the beginning, is that the only one you would need to do? Like
That
if
is
you
correct.
say
811 is the only service you would need to do.
I mean, like you would only need to do that like one time though, if you had your own locator. Like if they saved the layout in like a GPS survey or something.
Well, 811 is the only system that is in place to mark facilities, okay? So the utility companies provide the maps to us. We in turn say, okay, you say there's facilities there, then we send the locator out. If you have your own locator on site, that's fine, it's just a double check.
Okay.
But really, the
And you still
811
need-
system should be the all-inclusive, okay? But the reason is, once you get out there and you start excavating, you may destroy a mark.
Right.
Now, we encourage you, if you have, call back in, request a destroyed marks. But you could, have your own site locators.
So at that point, you wouldn't be breaking the law?
Well, that's not for me to decide. So remember, I'm just a notification. I cannot interpret. All I can do is provide you what the law says. one attorney may see it this way, another one may see it another way. I just say is number one, make sure you've called, have the ticket on site, take your photos, do your due diligence, dig with care, and then, like you said, in the end, they just hammer it out. And then hopefully it doesn't have to go before the Underground Review Board. It's not every day is not a Dollywood day, I will tell you that. It's not a perfect system, but it's a great system when it's used correctly. Good questions. You guys are gonna knock this out when you get out there, right? Good, awesome. All right, any other questions? Yes, sir.
I'll point out one thing.
Certainly.
Did you notice that the color on your card for the electric is also orange?
Well, some of the color codes have come out and we've sent some of them back. Oh, you're right, that one must be some of my old color code cards.
What's wrong with it?
It is not the most defined color of red, but it is red. We know you're not colorblind. Yes.
So whenever you're submitting a ticket,
yes.
I want to ask this earlier, but
okay.
You were answering so many of them. Say you submit a ticket Sunday, 12 noon.
Okay.
It doesn't start processing until Monday night.
You got it. You got it. Very good.
So there's no point in doing it on Sunday. You just wait till Monday.
When you get our age, it's real important you do it right then. Because if you don't, it's gone. So, good question. Okay, so, yeah, the final thing I wanted to mention to you guys, and hopefully you guys are going to take this training. This is our Pipes Plus training. Yes, right here. Pipes stands for Partners in Protecting Everyone. And then the S is for the plus. So originally when we started it, pipeline companies are required by law to educate about digging around their pipelines. And so we decided to add all the facilities. We want to make sure you know safe digging practice around fiber. We want to make sure you know safe digging practices around electric. So that's what this training is about, 7 modules. We talk about the 811 piece, about requirements of the law. We talk about you as an excavator, what you have to do. We talk about telco, electric. We have a locator piece in there so you kind of get an idea of a little bit of education around locating and how it works. And it's 7 modules. You can log in and out, do it at your convenience. Here's the great thing. At the end of it, you're going to take actually it's 70 questions. 70 questions, and as long as you make 80, you'll receive a certification. This training, as I said, is what's approved. Should you go to the Damage Prevention Review Board and you're required to take the training, that's this. There's lots and lots of associations that have approved this for their continuing credit hours.